Ever wonder what would happen if a quiet, totally overworked mother suddenly grew a backbone of steel? Well, J.B. Priestley's amazing and honestly hilarious play, Mother's Day, dives right into that. It's a really clever look at the role of a mother in a family. You know, someone who's loved, sure, but also completely taken for granted. So let's get into it and see how this whole character showdown plays out. All right, to really get this transformation, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. First, we'll see the problem, which we're calling the invisible mother. Then we'll meet the person who shakes everything up in a study in contrasts. After that, things get wild with the personality swap, which of course leads to a lesson in respect. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the play's powerful message. Okay, so let's meet our main character, Mrs. Annie Pearson. On the surface, she's a sweet woman in her 40s, a totally devoted wife and mom. But here's the thing. She's got a huge problem. Her family treats her less like a person and more like, I don't know, a talking coffee maker. She's constantly working, nobody appreciates her, and deep down, she's really, really unhappy about it. And the play is, well, it's pretty blunt about her role. She's not the heart of the home, she's an unpaid domestic servant. Seriously. Her family just waltzes in, demands tea, or asks for their clothes to be ironed, and then heads right back out to have fun, leaving her behind. It's just this endless, thankless cycle. This quote right here, it just nails the problem. She knows they're being thoughtless and selfish. She says it herself. But she's just too nice, too fond of them to actually do anything about it. She keeps making excuses for them, which means her own sweet, submissive nature is basically part of the trap she's in. So just when it seems like Mrs. Pearson is stuck for good, her neighbor, Mrs. Fitzgerald, walks in. And let me tell you, if Mrs. Pearson is like a gentle rain, Mrs. Fitzgerald is a thunderstorm. She's the one who's gonna light the fuse on this whole situation, and she is the absolute total opposite of her friend. I mean, just look at the difference here. It's night and day, right? Mrs. Pearson is gentle, timid, submissive, with this light, flurried voice. And then you have Mrs. Fitzgerald, who's bold, strong-willed, and dominating with a deep voice. This isn't just 2 different personalities having a chat. This contrast is the engine that drives the entire plot forward. And her advice? It's just as direct as she is. She basically tells Mrs. Pearson, hey, you need to take control. Be the boss. But poor Mrs. Pearson just can't bring herself to do it. She can't stand any kind of conflict. So, seeing that a little pep talk isn't going to cut it, Mrs. Fitzgerald comes up with a much more, well, magical idea. And this is where the story gets really fun and, honestly, a little weird. Mrs. Fitzgerald learns some magic out east, as she says, and she suggests they don't just, change their attitudes, they should literally change bodies. So how's this going to work? Well, the plan is as wild as it is simple. Mrs. Fitzgerald says, I'll put my tough personality into your body, and you can hang out in mine for a bit. All it takes is for them to hold hands while she mutters this little spell she picked up on her travels. And believe it or not, with just a few strange-sounding words, poof, the switch happens. All of a sudden, you've got the fiery, no-nonsense spirit of Mrs. Fitzgerald inside the meek-looking body of Mrs. Pearson. And guess what? The family is just about to get home. And oh, what a shock it is, the new Mrs. Pearson isn't in the kitchen making tea. Nope, they find her sitting at the table, smoking a cigarette, drinking a stout, and playing a game of cards. By herself. One by one, her family members come home to a scene they absolutely do not understand. First up is her daughter Doris, who marches in demanding her yellow dress be ironed. The new Mrs. Pearson not only says no, but she just completely tears into Doris's boyfriend, Charlie Spence. The spoiled Doris is left totally speechless and almost in tears. She has never heard her mother talk like this before. Next in is her son, Cyril, who's just as demanding. When he complains that she's not doing her job, she brilliantly compares herself to a workers' union going on strike. She tells him she's simply joined the movement for better treatment. You can just imagine the look on his face. He's totally baffled. But the real knockout punch? That's saved for her husband, George, who's always acting so important. He thinks he's the king of the castle. But she completely deflates him by dropping a huge truth bomb. Everyone at his favorite club secretly makes fun of him. They even have a ridiculous nickname for him, Pompey Umpy Pearson. Ouch. His ego is just shattered. And you know what? This shock treatment, it actually works. Yeah, they're confused and they're angry, but for the first time ever, the harsh words coming out of their mother's mouth force them to actually stop and think about how they've been acting. They're finally confronted with their own selfishness. So, after the family's been properly shaken up, the real Mrs. Fitzgerald, in Mrs. Pearson's body, comes back. She sees that the lesson has landed and she agrees it's time to swap back. But one thing is for sure, things are not going back to the way they were before. And this is what the play is really all about. It's a huge call for actually recognizing and appreciating the work mothers do. It's about empowering women inside their own homes and showing how important mutual respect and shared responsibilities are for any family to actually work. So, in the end, the family, totally humbled, agrees to help make dinner and even stay home for a family card game. And Mrs. Pearson? She's not the same timid woman anymore. Having seen what a little bit of assertiveness can do, she's finally found her voice. And even better, her family has finally learned how to listen. So that leaves us with one last thing to think about. The play uses a magical shortcut to fix everything. But what does that tell us about the real world? Without a magic spell to swap bodies, what does it really take to get the respect you deserve? Maybe the point is that sometimes we all need to find that little bit of Mrs. Fitzgerald's fighting spirit inside of us.